Yeah, starting point is in the UK, the government sets dietary guidelines, and this is done by a committee called the Scientific Advisory Committee on Nutrition. This is a committee of the government's Office of Health Improvement and Disparities. It provides expert scientific advice on nutrition and related health issues and assessment of those issues. It advises the UK government and the governments in the three devolved countries, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, and there's a secretariat to support the committee. At the moment, the chair of the Scientific Advisory Committee on Nutrition is Ian Young from Queen's University Belfast. Deputy chair is Julie Lovegrove from University of Reading. There are 15 other members. 11 of those are academics. One is a public health nutritionist, one is an ex-industry person, and there are 2 lay members, that is 2 people from the public. There are subgroups of the committee. For example, there's a maternal and child nutrition subgroup, and there are working groups. For example, there's a working group on vitamin D fortification. So the role of the Scientific Advisory Committee on Nutrition is to provide the science-based risk assessment. So that's what the committee does. The government makes the policy, so it manages the risk. And then another part of the government, which this committee is responsible to, gives the communication, and this includes, if you like, marketing to the public and so on. So that's the way it works in the UK. So the framework for the work of the Scientific Advisory Committee on Nutrition is set out in a living document, which was last updated in January 2023, which basically outlines the tools that can be used for evaluating the evidence, how the evidence is graded, and the statistical approaches that can be used. So there are different types of evidence that are used. These are mainly human studies. They can be association studies, or they can be randomized controlled trials. But the committee also takes notice of biomarkers and of biological plausibility. And of course, the plausibility could come from mechanistic studies in animals, for example. Obviously, human studies have the highest weighting. So the data that might be used would be systematic reviews and meta-analyses, randomized controlled trials, cohort studies, genetic association studies, data from surveys. We have an excellent National Diet and Nutrition Survey, which is a rolling survey in the UK, and various reports. So the working groups consider the evidence and draft a report. The main committee considers and agrees the report. There's then a public consultation on the report. Then there's a revision, and then the report is finally signed off and, if you like, delivered to the government. So these are examples of some of the reports. For example, there's one on carbohydrate diets here. There's a saturated fat report. This one here is on fish consumption, risks and benefits. So these are the reports that have been, or examples of the reports that have been produced. These are really extensive. You know, a panel might work on this report for 2 years, for example. So now I'm going to show you the recommendations, the nutrient recommendations. I'm not going to go over those in detail, but I have slides of them all for completion, so people can look at those afterwards if they want my presentation. And then I'll show you some of the guidelines. So the recommendations at the moment are 2,500 calories per day for men, 2,000 for women, less than 35% energy from fat, less than 11% from saturated fat, 13% from mono, 6.5% from poly, and trans fat as low as possible. Carbohydrates should be at least 50% of energy, but free sugar should be less than 5% of energy. And protein in men, 55 grams a day, 45 grams a day in women, and 30 grams per day of fiber for both men and women. So these are the high-level recommendations. So I have these slides, which are for the macronutrients and so on, according to age. This is children from 1 up to 18, children and adolescents. This is adults, males and females, 19 to 64, 65 to 74, and above 75 years of age. And then I have the same thing for the vitamins for children, vitamins for adults, minerals for children, minerals for adults. So anyone who wants the presentation, just ask me, you can see all of the details. But the overarching guidelines are here, which is at least 5 portions of a variety of fruit and veg every day. Base meals on potatoes, bread, rice, pasta. Sorry, not pasty. That's pasty is something completely different. This should be pasta or other starchy carbohydrates, choosing whole grain versions where possible. Have some dairy or dairy alternatives, choosing lower fat and lower sugar options. Eat beans, pulses, fish, eggs, meat, and other proteins, including 2 portions of fish a week, one of which should be oily. Choose unsaturated oils and spreads and eat small amounts. Drink 6 to 8 cups or glasses of fluid a day. And if consuming foods and drinks high in fat, salt, and sugar, have these less often and in small amounts. So I think those are consistent with lots of the other things that we've seen. This is visualized in the Eat Well guide, and we've seen other versions of this today. And I think it's obvious what this is showing. Relative proportions of these different types of foods. Eat less of these, and there's some things on the side for water and dairy and so on. We have front of pack labeling, which is traffic light for particular components, which are energy, fat, saturated fat, sugar, and salt. And then just to finish, thank you, just to remind you of this meeting coming up in October. Thanks so much.